The Zephyrian Empire's reign. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the Andromeda sector for over 1,000 years. Their crystalline ships moved through space like floating cathedrals, each one capable of reducing entire planets to cosmic dust. The Empire's reach extended across 47 star systems, and their word was absolute law among the countless species that lived under their dominion. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, his 6 arms folded behind his towering frame. The Zephyrians were beings of living crystal, their bodies reflecting the light of distant stars like walking gemstones. They had evolved on a world where only the hardest materials survived, and this philosophy had shaped their entire civilization. Strength was everything. Weakness was death. Admiral, his communications officer announced, her voice chiming like struck bells, "We have detected an unknown vessel entering the restricted zone around Kepler 442 bits." Kethvar's crystalline features shifted into what might have been amusement. Another primitive species seeking to challenge our authority. What is their technological classification? The officer consulted her readings. Curious. Admiral, their ship appears to be constructed primarily of metal alloys, primitive fusion drives. Energy signatures suggest they have barely achieved faster than light travel. Pathetic. Kethvar waved one of his lower arms dismissively. Open a channel. We shall give them the standard warning before we reduce their vessel to debris. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Defiance, Captain Sarah Chen was having the worst day of her career. The human exploration vessel had been conducting a routine survey mission when their navigation systems malfunctioned, dropping them out of hyperspace in what appeared to be heavily patrolled alien territory. "Captain, we're being hailed," reported Lieutenant Marcus Webb from the communication station. The young officer's hands were steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. On screen, Sarah ordered, straightening her uniform. She had commanded deep space missions for 15 years, but this was humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization. The weight of representing her entire species pressed down on her shoulders. The view screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Kethvar's imposing form. The Zephyrian's crystalline body caught the bridge lighting, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the walls. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Primitive vessel, you have entered territory belonging to the Zephyrian Empire. You will immediately surrender your ship and submit to processing. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. She had spent her entire career exploring the unknown, always hoping that humanity's first contact would be peaceful. Instead, she was facing what appeared to be a galactic bully. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Defiance," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "We are peaceful explorers from the Sol system. We entered your territory by accident due to a navigation malfunction. We request safe passage to repair our systems and continue our mission." Kethvar's crystalline features shifted into what might have been confusion. In 1,000 years of expansion, no species had ever responded to Zephyrian demands with anything other than immediate surrender or futile resistance. This human's calm demeanor was unexpected. "You dare to make demands of the Zephyrian Empire?" he asked, his voice rising to a threatening crescendo. "We have conquered 47 star systems. We have crushed civilizations that had mastered technologies your species has never dreamed of. What makes you think your pathetic vessel could possibly challenge our might?" Sarah exchanged glances with her crew. Her tactical officer, Commander Elena Vasquez, was already running silent scans of the alien vessels. The readings were not encouraging. The Zephyrian ships were massive, heavily armed, and their energy signatures suggested weapons that could vaporize the Defiance in seconds. But Sarah had not become a starship captain by backing down from impossible odds. "Admiral," she said carefully, "humanity has learned that true strength comes not from the size of your weapons, but from the determination of those who wield them. We don't want to fight you, but we won't simply surrender either." The bridge of the Eternal Dominion fell silent. Kethvar stared at the view screen, his crystalline mind struggling to process what he had just heard. In his experience, inferior species either cowered in terror or launched futile attacks. They did not speak of determination and refused to surrender while remaining polite. Fascinating, he murmured to his subordinates. Perhaps these humans will provide more entertainment than usual before we crush them. What Admiral Kethvar did not know was that the UES Defiance was not just any human vessel. It was one of Earth's newest exploration ships, equipped with experimental technology that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. The ship's AI, designation HFY, was a quantum neural network capable of learning and adapting at superhuman speeds. Captain, HFY's voice whispered through Sarah's private comm channel. I have been analyzing the alien vessel's communication protocols. Their encryption is sophisticated but predictable. I may be able to access their tactical networks. Sarah's eyes widened slightly, but she kept her expression neutral. Do it, she subvocalized. As HFY began her electronic infiltration, the Zephyrian admiral was growing impatient. Enough talk, Kethvar declared. Tactical, prepare the disruptor cannons. We shall give these humans a demonstration of true power. The Eternal Dominion's weapon systems began to charge, their crystalline matrices glowing with barely contained energy. The other ships in the Zephyrian fleet followed suit, their combined firepower enough to glass an entire planet. But something unexpected happened. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, confusion evident in her chiming voice. Our weapons systems are experiencing irregularities. Explain. The targeting computers are providing contradictory information. Our sensors are detecting the human vessel in 17 different locations simultaneously. It's as if they're using some form of advanced deception technology. On the Defiance's bridge, HFY was working miracles. The AI had not only penetrated the Zephyrian networks, but was actively feeding them false information, creating phantom targets and disrupting their coordination. HFY, you beautiful machine, Commander Vasquez whispered as she watched the alien fleet's perfect formation begin to falter. But Sarah knew they had only bought themselves minutes. Even with HFY's interference, the Zephyrians would eventually compensate and overwhelm them through sheer firepower. All hands, prepare for evasive maneuvers, she ordered. Engineering, I need everything you can give me from the engines. Chief Engineer Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. Captain, I can push the fusion reactors to 110% capacity, but it'll be rough on the ship. Do it. The Defiance suddenly leaped forward, its engines blazing with blue-white fire. The ship's experimental inertial dampeners allowed it to execute maneuvers that should have liquefied its crew, turning and weaving through space like a dancer avoiding falling debris. Admiral Kethvar watched in growing amazement as the small human vessel danced between his fleet's increasingly desperate weapons fire. The ship's movements were erratic, unpredictable, almost artistic. How are they doing this? He demanded. His science officer was frantically analyzing the human ship's maneuvers. Admiral, their movement patterns don't follow any logical tactical doctrine. They appear to be improvising in real time. This was the fundamental difference between human and Zephyrian thinking. The crystalline beings were logical, methodical, and precise. They followed established patterns and proven strategies. Humans, on the other hand, were chaos incarnate, creative, adaptable, and utterly unpredictable. As the chase continued, something even more remarkable happened. The human ship began to fight back, not with massive energy weapons or devastating missiles, but with pure ingenuity. Athena had learned to turn the Zephyrians' own systems against them, causing their ships to target each other, disrupting their communications, and even playing psychological warfare by broadcasting confusing messages across their networks. This is impossible, Kethvar breathed as he watched two of his escort vessels accidentally fire upon each other, their crews confused by HFY's electronic deceptions. Captain Chen stood at the center of her bridge, her crew working with the precision of a symphony orchestra. Every human aboard the Defiance was contributing something unique. Webb's intuitive understanding of alien psychology, Vasquez's tactical brilliance, Rodriguez's engineering genius, and Athena's superhuman processing power. But the Zephyrian Empire had not ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years by giving up easily. Admiral Kethvar's crystalline features hardened with resolve. All ships, form defensive pattern Omega-7, he commanded. We will contain the human vessel and destroy it with overwhelming force. The Zephyrian fleet began to reorganize, their movements becoming more cautious, but also more coordinated. They were learning, adapting to the human ship's unpredictable tactics. Sarah watched the alien vessels closing in around her ship like a crystalline net. The Defiance was fast and maneuverable, but it was still just one ship against an entire fleet. The odds were impossible, but she had faced impossible odds before. Athena, she said quietly, how long can you maintain the electronic warfare? At current levels, approximately 14 minutes before they develop effective countermeasures, the AI replied. However, I have been analyzing their tactical patterns. I believe I have identified a weakness in their formation. Sarah smiled grimly. Show me. The tactical display lit up with ATGENA's analysis. The Zephyrian ships, for all their power, were designed for overwhelming inferior opponents through brute force. Their formations assumed that their enemies would either flee or fight conventionally. But humans were neither conventional nor predictable. All hands, Sarah announced over the ship's comm system. Prepare for something that's never been tried before. We're about to show these aliens what humanity is really capable of. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire, masters of conventional warfare, were about to discover that humans had a very different definition of impossible. The fall of an empire. The Zephyrian fleet completed their encirclement of the human vessel, their crystalline hulls gleaming like deadly jewels against the star field. Admiral Kethvar felt satisfaction crystallizing in his chest. The primitive ship had provided unexpected entertainment, but now it was time to end this charade. All vessels, synchronized firing pattern Alpha Prime, he commanded. I want nothing left of this ship but cosmic dust. But Captain Sarah Chen was not planning to die quietly. As the Zephyrian weapons began their final charging sequence, she turned to her crew with a smile that would have terrified anyone who truly knew her. Athena, initiate Protocol Wildcard, she ordered. Protocol Wildcard was a theoretical combat doctrine that had never been tested in real battle. It was based on a simple premise. When facing overwhelming odds, don't try to match your enemy's strengths. Instead, force them to fight on your terms. The Defiance suddenly stopped its evasive maneuvers and began broadcasting on all frequencies. But instead of a surrender message, what emerged was something the Zephyrians had never encountered in 1,000 years of conquest. Music, specifically Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. What is this noise? Admiral Kethvar demanded as the classical composition flooded his communication channels. Unknown. Admiral, his communications officer replied, her crystalline features showing confusion. The human vessel appears to be singing. But the music was not random. Athena had calculated the exact frequencies that would interfere with Zephyrian crystal-based technology. The symphony's complex harmonies created resonance patterns that disrupted their targeting systems and caused their crystalline hulls to vibrate uncomfortably. Sir, the tactical officer reported, our weapons are experiencing synchronization errors. The harmonic interference is affecting our crystal matrices. Kethvar's 6 arms flailed in frustration. Override the interference. Destroy that ship. But Sarah wasn't finished. As Beethoven reached its crescendo, the Defiance launched its real attack. Not missiles or energy beams, but something far more dangerous to a rigid, hierarchical society: ideas. HFY had been studying Zephyrian society through their communications networks. The AI discovered that their empire was held together by absolute faith in their own superiority. Every Zephyrian was taught from birth that they were the ultimate evolution of intelligent life, destined to rule the galaxy forever. Now, HFY began broadcasting a very different message directly into their minds through their own neural interfaces. Images of human art, music, literature, and philosophy. Concepts of freedom, individual expression, and the beauty of diversity. Most dangerously of all, questions about the nature of power and whether might truly made right. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the Zephyrian fleet, crew members began to pause in their duties, their crystalline minds struggling to process these alien concepts. Some began to question orders for the first time in their lives. Others found themselves strangely moved by human creativity and wondered what their own empire had created beyond weapons and fear. "Admiral," his science officer called out, "we're detecting massive mural activity spikes across all vessels. The crew efficiency ratings are dropping rapidly." But the most profound effect was on Admiral Kethvar himself. As the most senior Zephyrian present, he received the full force of HFY's psychological assault. He saw human children playing in meadows, artists creating beauty for its own sake, scientists pursuing knowledge without thought of conquest. He witnessed the incredible diversity of human culture and realized that his empire had created nothing but uniformity and oppression. "This is not possible," he whispered, his crystalline voice cracking with doubt. "We are the superior species. We are the chosen ones." Captain Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "Admiral, your empire has ruled through fear for 1,000 years. But fear is not strength. It's weakness masquerading as power." "Silence," Kethvar roared, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "You want to know what real strength looks like," Sarah continued. "It's a small ship refusing to surrender against impossible odds. It's a crew working together because they choose to, not because they're forced to. It's the willingness to risk everything for an ideal." The Zephyrian fleet was falling apart. Ships were powering down their weapons as crews questioned their orders. Some vessels were even beginning to break formation as individual captains made their own decisions for the first time in their lives. But Admiral Kethvar was not ready to surrender his beliefs. With a roar of crystalline fury, he assumed direct control of the Eternal Dominion's weapon systems and fired everything he had at the human ship. The Defiance's shields flared brilliant white as they absorbed the massive energy discharge. The ship shuddered and groaned, its hull plates glowing cherry red from the heat. Sparks flew from control panels as systems overloaded. "Hull breach on Deck 7. Rodriguez reported from engineering. "We can't take another hit like that." But Sarah was smiling. "We don't need to." "Athena, execute Phase 2 of Wildcard." What happened next defied everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about warfare. Instead of trying to flee or return fire, the Defiance began to transmit its complete sensor logs of the battle to every inhabited system within 50 light years. The galaxy watched in amazement as recordings showed a single human ship facing down the entire Zephyrian fleet. More importantly, they saw the fleet's hesitation, the breakdown of discipline, and the visible cracks in the Empire's facade of invincibility. "You're broadcasting our defeat?" Kethvar asked in disbelief. "I'm broadcasting the truth," Sarah replied. "That empires built on fear and oppression always fall eventually. Usually they're brought down by those they've oppressed. But sometimes they destroy themselves when they encounter something they can't understand or control." Across the Zephyrian fleet, mutinies were breaking out. Crews who had been exposed to human ideas of freedom and self-determination were refusing to fight. Some ships were actually leaving the battle area, their crews deciding to think for themselves for the first time in their lives. The Admiral stared at his tactical display in horror. His mighty fleet was disintegrating before his eyes, not from enemy fire, but from an enemy that had infected his people with the most dangerous weapon of all, hope. "This is not war," he whispered. "This is chaos." "No," Sarah said gently. "This is choice, something your empire never gave anyone." The final blow came from an unexpected source. A young Zephyrian ensign on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion suddenly stood up from her station. "Admiral," she said, her voice clear and strong, "I refuse to participate in the destruction of beings who have shown us such beauty and possibility." Other crew members began to stand as well, their crystalline forms catching the light as they made their own choices. Within minutes, Admiral Kethvar found himself alone on his bridge, the supreme commander of an empire that no longer existed. "You have destroyed everything," he said to Captain Chen, his voice hollow with defeat. "No," Sarah replied. "We freed everyone, including you." The battle was over, but the real victory had already been won. Across the galaxy, species that had lived under Zephyrian rule for centuries were declaring their independence. The Empire's rigid hierarchy was crumbling as individual Zephyrians chose their own paths for the first time. Years later, historians would struggle to explain how a single human ship had toppled a 1,000-year-old galactic empire without firing a shot. The answer was simple but profound. They had shown the galaxy that there was an alternative to rule by fear. The Defiance limped back to human space, its hull scared but its crew triumphant. They had achieved something that military strategists had thought impossible. They had won a war by refusing to fight it on their enemy's terms. Admiral Kethvar, stripped of his rank and empire, eventually found himself on a small colony world populated by former Zephyrian slaves. To his surprise, they welcomed him. They understood that he, too, had been a prisoner of the system he had served. In the years that followed, the former admiral learned to appreciate the chaos and beauty of freedom. He even developed a fondness for human music, particularly Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. True strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the courage to inspire. And humanity, with all its chaos and contradictions, had shown everyone what was possible when beings chose cooperation over conquest. The age of the Zephyrian Empire was over. The age of choice had begun. And it all started with a single human ship that refused to surrender.